Welcome to Maintaining Access. In this chapter, we're going to be looking at backdoor overview, Linux backdoor, Windows backdoor countermeasures, netcat, and metaterpreter, which is basically metasploit, and I'm going to elaborate on metasploit. When you think of a backdoor in the system, you think of a way to essentially bypass any access controls that were put in place. Generally, this is something that was never intended to succeed, but the idea is these are for the attackers, or sometimes called hackers, to get into the computer system when they want to. And what would usually happen is they would locate a weakness in the software so they could then plant a Trojan horse program, for example, which would be more of an unethical way, but it was just basically malware put on the system that would be listening on a given port number, that when the evildoer, the hacker, decides to do a port scan, they could pick up the port numbers of the system, hoping to recognize a well-known Trojan with the goal of, coming into the system at will. Now, sometimes backdoors are put into the system intentionally, and they're called maintenance hooks. And they're instructions in the software that do allow easy access and maintenance, normally for the programmer. And this allows entry to code at specific points without security checks. It's basically a workaround, but the thing is that the maintenance hooks were never supposed to be left in there. They should be removed before the software is deployed for usage by other people. Now, normally when you think of a backdoor, though, you think of rootkits and you think of Trojans, which are all in the malware category. Now, a rootkit is really a much deeper infection than really a Trojan horse program. A rootkit kind of goes back to the idea of Linux and Unix-based systems. Their most powerful account is called root. Just like in the Windows world, our most powerful account is called administrator or admin. When you have root access, you have complete, unregulated access. You have complete access to the system. So the idea of a rootkit is to infect the machine with a piece of software that would give the attacker or hacker complete access to come into the system at any point they want, again and again, and have complete access with nothing to stop them, unless it's discovered and removed. Now, rootkits are hard to pick up, and they're rather stealthy, which means you don't really see them. Rootkits are used by hackers for reasons. They hide background processes, they can elevate your privileges, hide files, they can hide registry entries, they can turn off your auditing, and even make modifications to your event logs, like your security log or your system log, mostly the security log. They can redirect executable files, hide device drivers, hide user accounts. So essentially, when a rootkit is on your machine, it is hiding so many things, and it may go undetected. It may simply go undetected unless we have some sort of rootkit detector, or we're lucky and the antivirus picks it up. It would be better if we were never infected to begin with. But the difficulty of the rootkit is the fact is you just don't see it. It's not like you could do a directory listing and go, ooh, there's the rootkit. It has a tendency to be able to hide, the existence of even the processes running, or the existence of these additional users you don't even know are on your system as far as their accounts go. You simply don't see them. They mask their existence. Now, Linux was probably, I think, more known for the rootkits. You don't really hear these quite as much in the Windows world. They usually have 4 groups of tools. We have Trojan programs, which are altered versions of some of your main, like login, netstat, looking at your services, backdoors in the systems, sniffers, and so on. Most user mode rootkits replace critical operating system files with new versions. So essentially, your system is still running, but it's running with a modified version. So everything looks kind of normal, but yet it has additional programs, additional features of what the built-in software can do, because it's not really the built-in software anymore. It's been replaced with a lookalike. There are rootkit detectors. There are programs to even create rootkits, just like there's programs out there to create viruses, to create Trojan horse programs. They've been around for quite a while. When we think of rootkits, we do think, mostly I think of the kernel mode rootkits, and these are quite deep into the kernel, the core of the system. And unfortunately, you can't really see, unless you have something to detect it or expose the rootkit, you don't even realize it's there. But yet this does give the attacker or the hacker, complete access to your system. And yet you would traditionally think of, like, especially in Windows, you would think of just looking and, at the processes and seeing, do I see something that shouldn't be there? But again, it literally can hide itself. Linux is not the only one that gets rootkits. There's obviously, Windows as well. Although it did start in the Linux environment. Windows rootkit countermeasures, when you think of that, you could have a dedicated tool that would detect rootkits. You might have an antivirus that could pick up on that. If you were running Tripwire, that's like a file integrity verifier, that would be able to detect and alert you if there happens to be some critical system files that have been modified. So if the system is suspect, sometimes you can boot into safe mode. The computer can come up, you can press F8 and then choose safe mode. And in some cases, the device drivers that would reveal the rootkit are basically kind of uncloaked. I mean, because you're booting in safe mode, it now can expose the information and you suddenly can see. It's like they put glasses on you and you go, wow, I can see there's some files that shouldn't be here. We must have a rootkit installed on the system. Because the device drivers usually help cloak the rootkit files, the safe mode deprives the system of those device drivers, therefore it's exposed. Now, if you do get a rootkit detected on your system, it would be best to just basically start over. Erase and reinstall the operating system without internet connectivity. Patch with all service packs and hotfixes is what's recommended. Basically, start fresh. If your rootkit got on your system, there's no telling what else is on your system malware-wise. Plus, you don't really know if you truly got the rootkit off the system. Now, every time your software tells you have a rootkit, do you really believe it? I would say from experience, I remember having AVG on my system one time, and it told me that I had a rootkit. And I don't really go to websites normally that would infect me from what I could tell. So I really doubted it. So I did some research on the exact rootkit that it claimed it had and found out that AVG was identifying, I believe it was the CD-ROM drivers, as a rootkit. So I'm glad I didn't just go and redo my machine completely, because that would have been pretty time consuming. And with any malware, realize you cannot always trust your backups. Your backups should be scanned as well, because they could actually have some malicious content, such as a rootkit or a Trojan horse type program. Now here's an interesting tool. It's called Netcat. Some call it the Swiss Army knife of networking. Some call it a Trojan. It's not really technically a Trojan, but it's a very powerful tool. And with this, it has many functions. So I'm going to go out and show you some. You can see it's pretty popular. There's like little PDFs on how to use Netcat. SANS Institute again, pocket reference. And just kind of looking through at what it can do. You're going to see in this chapter where it talks about creating listeners, where you can actually get basically a command or a shell prompt on another system on a port number of your choosing. And it just does so much. What can it do for you? Here's a pretty good list. Outbound and inbound connections, tunneling mode, port scanning, advanced usage options. Telnet code parser. Just goes through and shows you a lot. So a lot of different compatibilities, a lot of different systems with this. But Netcat, let's show you this. just to show you the popularity. Really neat tool. Swiss Army knife of networking. And then you've got others that are a little more elaborate that give you a lot of detail. This is how we port scan. This is how we do a chat server. How we do file transfer. A directory transfer. Encrypt your data while sending over the network. Streaming a video, cloning a device. It just goes on and on with what you can do. So that's what I mean by Swiss Army knife of networking. So kind of a list here of what Netcat can do. They're showing it from a Windows perspective. It also runs in a Linux environment. It has a variety of switches, parameters that you can use with this. And these, of course, dealing with how detailed you want the output, verbose. Executing a program such as a command prompt. You're going to see the listen parameter being used. Listen, listen, later reconnect even if the connection gets dropped. Really good information, showing off some of the syntax for Windows versus Linux or Unix. Pretty similar. You got the Netcat, the NC-L for listen, then -P, the capitalization does matter, -L, and then just regular -P for port number, followed by a port number of your choice. It does not have to be 1, 2, 3, 4. And essentially going in and running, command.exe if you're Windows, or bin shell if you happen to be Linux or Unix. So really, really interesting tool. Next part I will look at is called the metinterpreter. And the point of this relates to the chapter. So the metinterpreter scripts are to give end users an easy interface to write quick scripts, can be run against remote targets after successful exploitation. This chapter is trying to push the idea of how we can create backdoors into systems, so we can, as a hacker type or ethical hacker for testing purposes, we can come back to that system again and again. So for creating backdoors, we've seen them talk about Trojans as well as rootkits, and also Netcat, really strong tool. Plus, this one is Metasploit. Now, this chapter doesn't do a whole lot with the Metasploit, but I would like to. Okay. When you look at Metasploit, it's the website we're talking about, the metinterpreter. With this, you can download Metasploit. Okay. It comes in different editions, kind of different than it used to in the past. Okay. Penetration testing download shows some of the varieties that we have now. And if you're looking at an older Metasploit book, it will not necessarily have all of this. This is their website, rapid7.com, and you can see there is a full-blown pro version of this. And obviously this is going a little beyond just the, creating backdoors, but it shows you all that you can do. And of course they're pushing the idea of writing scripts. But with this, the Metasploit Pro version 7-day trial can automate a lot of what you're trying to do. And the whole idea of this is offensive security or penetration testing. And with this also, in the past, Metasploit framework is what people knew of. And it tended to be more command line, no GUI for the most part. And so people that have been around for a while will probably use Metasploit framework. If you want all the features of a full-blown penetration testing product, you add Metasploit Pro. And then there's even a Metasploit community that they have now for just everybody else, and it is free. Okay. This particular video on the Rapid7 site would be really nice to look at. It does go through and explain that the Metasploit product, and of course our chapter talked about the metinterpreter, the fact that we can write scripts, yes, in these products, and framework was probably known mostly for that. And it is offensive security, so we can find out what people can do to us, so we can do our own penetration testing. We've already covered some chapters talking about vulnerability assessments and a little bit about penetration testing as well. And again, framework is a command line. It's free. The community version is a graphical interface. It's free. And the pro version, if you want it all, basically fully featured. It is recommended that you do your testing, of course, if you didn't know, on a virtual machine. You could use a product like VMware Workstation, for example. And there is a recommended, let me see if I can find everything. There is a recommended download called Metasploitable. It's an intentionally vulnerable Linux virtual machine that you could do some of your testing on. So that'd be a safe environment, because when you do some of these things, you want to have environments that sort of simulate some vulnerabilities, but yet you don't normally with these products want to be able to turn off your security to use them. You don't want to turn off your antivirus on your main system or your firewall, yet you may need to do some of that in the virtual world, and you can get away with it more so. So a lot of information on the Metasploit product and even installation guide. Nice little PDF to check out. Well, probably a really good read. And of course, here again, the whole point is to show that the Metinterpreter from the Metasploit product can be used for creating backdoors, and that's how it relates. But at least now you know a little bit more about a wonderful product called Metasploit and your 3 options as well. And that's where Metinterpreter comes from Metasploit. As far as what we've covered, we've looked at backdoors. There's backdoors whether you use Linux or Windows. Realize again, there's Trojan backdoors. That's why you have to be careful with malware not to get a Trojan on our system. Something that could be running that was basically came along with another piece of software we installed. We also saw how powerful rootkits can be and how they can be stealthy and cloak their presence. Netcat is essentially the Swiss Army knife of networking, creates backdoors as well. The Metinterpreter from the Metasploit that we looked at Rapid 7 also has the ability to use scripts and create backdoors as well.